I'm your host, Donna Cates, and each week we'll dive into powerful stories, expert strategies, and practical tools to help you take charge of your financial future. Whether you're planning for retirement, navigating a divorce, or simply looking to build your wealth with confidence, this is your space to grow, learn, and thrive. Let's get started with today's podcast. Hey, everybody, welcome today. And I'm really excited to introduce you to Vanessa Laughlin, who is with Bannister Advisors. And Vanessa, I'm really eager to do a deep dive into your career journey today. So, can you start by giving us about a 90-second overview of the work that you do and why you got into it?
Certainly. So, when I talk about Bannister Advisors, and we are proudly heading into our 7th year now in business, there's a couple of things that I like to highlight right out the gate before I even talk about the kind of client services that we do. One of those things is that I have the privilege of saying and hearing the name of my late father-in-law every single day. So my father-in-law, Jay Bannister Laughlin, is a huge, huge, huge part of the inspiration for what we offer to clients as they go through overwhelming, stressful, very, very complex, complicated situations in their lives with their families. It goes back to the kind of business that was started because it was something that our family needed at the time and could not find. The second thing I like to tell people about Bannister and our team is that it is absolutely a team sport. So I'm really here as a representative of a larger group of core team members, but also extended community collaborators. And then outside of that, a very actually large and fascinating ecosystem of other people who work within what we call lifespan navigation. We are proud to have the federal trademark since 2021 for lifespan navigation. And that really at its core does describe what we do, which is support individuals and families who are managing, facing, trying to navigate some of life's most overwhelming situations. So much in the way that you would call a lawyer if you had a legal matter, or you'd call a CPA if you had a tax situation you needed to get ahead of or address or recover from. We're the multidisciplinary team that you call when there might be a health issue for any age family member, pediatric through geriatric. It might be something even like an actual natural disaster, like the fires in LA most recently this year. Whatever that overwhelming, again, high stakes, stressful, and complicated situation might be, we help give back the time, the perspective, the support in decision making, the assistance in navigating systems. So, really, so that our clients don't feel that they're alone in whatever overwhelming set of circumstances they find themselves really needing to deal with, address, and ideally, whenever possible, get ahead of. And that's what we do at Bannister.
That sounds so fabulous. And I'm going to unpack a little bit of that. So, the first thing that I heard is that it takes a village.
Yes.
And we know that that's true. Some of us resist asking for help, but knowing that there's somebody out there like your firm that can provide that help is significant. And then the two, I heard you say that you literally created the business because you identified the need and weren't able to find it for yourself. So kudos to you and your team for stepping up and filling a huge void for everyone.
That's what we try to do every single day. And just to speak to what you just said, both from the village aspect and the filling a gap, addressing an unmet need, it's not just my stories, right? It's now all of the team, again, core team, community collaborators, extended ecosystem. We're all drawn to this work often because we can't go back in time and change the way things happened or played out. We can't see the red flags. We can't know that, oh gosh, if I had a chance to do that over again, this is how it would have happened. What we can do is help people who may be in somewhat similar circumstances that we're in. We can help assist them in their unique journey, but we can say, you know, here's something you might be thinking about three or four steps ahead, and how can we help you get ahead of that and prepare? And people might say, how did you know? And it is not that we can see the future, but that we have been through it either as individuals to start, but more often this is what we do every single day. Again, like I said, every situation is unique. However, it's those trends or patterns or creative solutions that might apply from one, again, scenario to the next. And we aren't limited by any particular vertical, right? We're not limited to working within the legal system, the financial system, healthcare, government entitlements, family systems, right? We can really be nimble and flexible and at times creative, really to get the job done and meet the, again, very unique goals of the clients that we serve.
And tell me a little bit more about who you are serving, because I know you already said pediatrics to death. So
Yeah,
we're
family planning, perinatal, pediatric, all through adult life into healthy aging, so geriatric care, and then into even end of life and after loss support as well. But yes, so you were saying, Donna.
So I'm curious, do you serve just a particular location or demographic, or are you all over the U.S.?
We are truly all over the US. We are also experienced in working with families that maybe have one family member in upstate New York, another family member in Southern California, and a third family member might be in Singapore, right? So can sometimes be an international component as well to what we do. Effectively, also, if someone is traveling, we can be helpful in getting them back to the States in the right way if it's kind of almost like a extraction situation, right? Those are some of the more, I would say, extreme or high intensity scenarios that we might support. In terms of demographics, we work with humans, humans all over.
Mm-hmm.
What does differ is who the payer is. So I'm kind of using a term from medical health insurance. We're not an insurance covered service yet. We're generally speaking private pay, the way you would hire an attorney, again, or a CPA, another professional service provider. Where it gets interesting and frankly, I think gets wonderful is that we do have a third party payer that is now represents about half of our business and growing. So in 2020, June of 2020, our strategic long-term plans became accelerated because of, that global pandemic we all experienced. So we were approached by companies who asked, can you do what you do in this way for our people, our employees, and we'll pay the bill? And we said, we sure can. So we designed a benefits program that was very, very geared toward and friendly to that kind of enterprise model. We work with companies anywhere from 100 employees up to about 10,000. So, we're still, because we're small and growing, we're not going to be in every company, let's say tomorrow, but we get in and we tend to stick around. We like to think of ourselves as an extension of the resources within an organization, almost like a utility. So you have the first line of support, right? Going to be people kind of taking care of their own needs, maybe their managers supporting, they have their base level EAP and benefits. And then the next level up is maybe some more specialized resources that are, again, still within the base level portfolio. We really only come in for that kind of top of the pyramid. If it cannot be addressed or supported from what exists today, then that's where we come in. So we really, especially in the scenario of employee benefits, we really truly exist only to meet, by definition, unmet needs.
Got it. Got it. And what a wonderful resource for an employer to offer, because the thing is that most of us don't know what we need to know until we're in the middle of needing it, and then we don't know where to go. So that I'm curious to see how you'll answer this question. because you've actually created a unique industry for yourself, or business anyway. What is the
Mhm.
biggest problem that you see in the industry or the business that you're doing, and what are you doing to solve that?
Yes, that's actually it's a tough answer, but it's an easy answer. Systems across the board are broken. When you cannot get through to the Social Security office, right? When
Mhm.
you cannot get responses from, let's say, a court system, say whether that's probate or family law, when you are just in the depths of the very, very awful situation that is having medical care denied
Mm.
because of the insurance system, right? And then and so on and so forth. It's almost to the degree from our perspective that as a society, these are unforced errors, right?
Mm. Mm.
We can't necessarily stop someone from having an aggressive cancer that's progressing, right? Even if we have all the medicines, at our fingertips, let's say, all the right therapies, interventions. But the fact that somebody might not even be able to get in for a diagnostic that would have
Mm.
caught the cancer at a point where it could have been addressed more effectively, that to me is unacceptable and something that we see all the time. And is probably among the greatest thrills, for lack of a better word, for those of us who do this work within our company and anybody who does it in a complementary way within a system like healthcare, or even outside of a system adjacent to, let's say, healthcare law, is when we can correct for those errors that should never have occurred in the first place.
Mm.
That is the biggest, again, win for us and on behalf of our clients. And that's what gives us energy throughout the day, even when we are walking alongside people going through what you would hope would be the absolute worst experiences, days of their entire lifetimes. And
Mm.
so I would say the number one thing would be system errors or system dysfunction. And again, to the degree that we can even mitigate is absolutely why, in a large part, we exist.
Well, and I'm curious too. The is it sounds like I don't even need to ask the question, because you're unique because nobody else is doing what you're doing. But what makes you, or how do people find you? How do they even discover that you're there? And what makes you unique and how you're working with them?
So I'll definitely start. Thank you. Great question. I'll start with the how do people find us? It has always been, and I think will continue to be for a while, all about referrals.
Hmm.
What has changed over time since we started in 2018 is that the source of those referrals has evolved. And it's involved in a way that our team is really, really, really proud of. Because initially, it was networks of attorneys and financial advisors who would, as trusted professionals, learn about a situation or set of circumstances, hopefully before something became a crisis or completely overwhelming, on behalf of their client. And they would make very kindly the referral saying, here's an option for you to consider. Go talk to Bannister, do the initial easy 15 to 20-minute intake phone call, and then see if you want to take the next steps from there to explore working with them further. But here's something you should be aware of. Now, fast forward to 2025 and beyond, because we've existed for long enough, most of our referrals are coming from clients we've worked with in the past, whether that's them coming back for a new situation or to kind of address something that had stabilized, but now they just need a little bit of extra support to get it back on track, let's say. Or very kindly, they are sharing with their family members, with their friends, with their colleagues. That's definitely within an organization. It's a similar pathway where it initially starts with human resources recommending us.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's people who received help from us and were felt they wanted to share about it, because obviously, as you can imagine, there's certain situations where just from that professional boundary, maybe you don't want to tell people why you're taking a medical leave. It's private information, right? Family leave, medical leave. And then over time, again, within the companies, we know we've arrived when one category of team member refers us as kind of the number one internal referrer. And it's not HR, it's
Mm-hmm.
not legal, it's not necessarily managers, executive assistants.
Wow. Wow.
Usually takes a year and a half to 3 years to get to that point, but that's when we know we are a utility. We are kind of in when they are the ones to say, "Oh, you haven't you haven't heard of Bannister? You haven't seen them in our benefits booklet, or you weren't sure what that meant? Let me tell you, you should call them, because they are amazing. That function within an organization is just such critical interface and has, again, this depth of knowledge about what's really going on in a company
Right. Right.
enterprise. So we're very, very, very proud when we have that become, I would say, kind of graduate to that level of
Mhm.
referral. Yeah.
Very rewarding, I'm sure,
Mhm.
for everybody.
Well,
Well,
often because the executive assistants are also in a critical function of helping get ahead of, plan for, and address internal crises, let's say. So they're in
wow.
this sort of internal protector, supporter, assist with type role.
Yeah.
They keep the organization healthy in many different ways.
Mhm.
And so they see us, I hope they see us, or we've been told they see us in different settings as an extension of their mission and
Mhm.
what they're there to do as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, tell me, where do you see the industry going over the next 5 to 10 years? And what are you doing to stay on top of it other than just continuing to grow and be present?
Yeah, I think of it a bit like an ecosystem. And I think if you've ever seen kind of nature documentaries, right, and they talk about, the evolution of, let's say, a forest and all the different, components of that ecosystem. And I think that there's, to a certain degree, what's the expression? Necessity is the mother of invention, right? And I talked a bit about unmet needs. So I think that the industry is going to continue to grow and, kind of through a process of trial and error, continue to address those high stakes, high value interventions, is one way to think of it, kind of from using a medical term, to really address what's needed. Because at the end of the day, somebody might come up with an app that can, help organize, let's say, information or help with this kind of niche problem solving. But if that doesn't actually help anybody, even if they've got a ton of funding, let's say, from venture capital or private equity, that won't matter if it isn't actually something the marketplace needs. I think in terms of the way we stay relevant and the way that we continue to add value as an organization is really follow the need. That expression, like, follow the money. This is more follow what people need. If I may add something to that as well, when we're working with an individual, a family, in the context of, again, they're an employee in an organization, really they're just kind of on their own and they found us, we don't seek to take over or commandeer something that is working, right?
Hmm.
We understand the dignity and worth and the power and the autonomy of individuals. So that's why our services are always meant to be time limited, right? We're not your long term care manager, case manager. We might help you get set up with, let's say, a patient advocate that's going to be with you for the long term, or daily money manager. But if you are a person who, even in the chaos, thrives on managing their own personal finances and bills, why would you ever want someone to take that away from you? Maybe you put in a series of safety nets or different, kind of backups. But I think that even in our most challenging times, we have strengths, we are resilient, and having that complementary meet you where you're at and only fill in and support both qualitatively, but also for the amount of time that's needed. Donna, I can't tell you how many resilient, incredible, powerful people, leaders. Even if they're not the leader of a company, they're the leader in their family. Or if we can just get things stabilized and supported so they can have 2 consecutive good nights of sleep, they come back ready to make decisions, take action, do what needs to be done. And that's also a beautiful thing. Sometimes when we have an engagement, we call them engagements, sort of project, right?
Mm-hmm.
When that ends early because our client says, I'm in a much better place than when we started. And I know that we're only kind of 2/3 of the way of the scope of what we thought we would do together, but we're good. The so and so family respectfully doesn't need you anymore. We celebrate that,
That's a
right? That's
win,
actually
right?
that's actually a win. Likewise, helping people not have to come back to us because we've put the stabilizing again kind of systems have been refreshed or put in place in the first place. That's also a sign of success when people say, well, we can call you, right, if we need to. And we're like, you can, but hopefully you won't need to. Or hopefully next time we hear from you, it's going to be because you're referring somebody else in your community and your family that could benefit in the way that you did. So that kind of, I think, helps explain as well the limits of what we do,
Right.
um, which is important to what we do overall.
Right, absolutely. So you're stepping in to help in that moment of crisis and getting things figured out and systems put in place, not there to be the long-term hand holder or support
Yeah.
system. So I get that
There's an
distinction.
ethical benefit to that. There's an incentive, right, to that. So we're not going to recommend that the answer to all your problems is to work with Bannister for the rest of your life. Like, ooh,
Right.
no,
Mhm.
we're not in that business. We certainly are flattered when people say, "Can we just keep you on retainer forever?" And we say, "Gosh, that's a high compliment." But again, our model and frankly, those boundaries exist for a reason.
Mhm.
Because as you can imagine, like any advisor, sometimes you have to your client is the person in control and power, right? That's that
Mhm.
dynamic. Sometimes you need to speak truth to power, and that can be difficult if you're trying to, let's say, maintain a long-term relationship. If
Mhm.
you are there as an advisor, as a consultant, right? The old joke of a good consultant, what reads your watch and tells you what time it is. And it is kind of a funny joke, but sometimes they're the only one who can see your watch face, right?
Right.
And so that can be useful, but you're not going to necessarily, as an advisor, as a client services professional of any kind, it's going to be maybe tricky if you think, gosh, if I say this to this client in this way at this time, well, then I never see them again, even if it's the right, you know,
Mm.
perspective or topic, or sometimes a really powerful question to leave people with. We don't do those right away. We meant to kind of get some rapport and build some
Mhm.
trust, right? Some credibility. But that I would say can sometimes be the most valuable aspect of what we deliver, the value that we add through the experience. And that is again something that wouldn't work as well if we were saying, oh gosh, I wish I could tell them this, but then that puts our entire model at risk. It's actually the opposite. It's what keeps
Mm.
people trusting us and coming back to us
Yeah, the
in the long
integrity. Yeah,
term.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm going to shift gears just a little bit and ask you to share with us your biggest personal experience or challenge that you face. And I say personal, it could be professional or personal, whichever
Yeah.
you choose, that you face this thus far in life and how that's shaping the way you're doing business. And I kind of suspect you've already mentioned it with the creation of your company and the name of it,
Yeah.
but share more with us.
Yeah, I can kind of unpack that a little bit. I was going to respond with, "How much longer do we have, Donna?" Yes, I I sometimes joke that I'm older than most people in their mid 40s because I feel like and I know I'm not alone in this, but there's a list of things that I've gone through that are uh, and survived, to the degree possible that are yeah, you can't make this up, right? In terms of
Right.
our experience in life, but I will speak to not just the context of the life and the too soon end of life of my father-in-law, Jay Bannister Laughlin. But the context leading up to it was also tricky. I think that our clients really experience this a lot too. And you've seen this, I think, for yourself, probably Donna, for your friends, your community, where you think, you catch up with a friend and they say, let me tell you what the last 4 months has been like. And you're thinking, because I haven't seen you, I haven't heard from you, what's going on? And they kind of give you this, like, again, inventory list. And you think, how can all of that happen to one person or one family? And when it rains, it pours, right? And it gets to the point where you're almost incredulous. Like, how can we also have, the roof failing, or, a hurricane on its way, when we're dealing with all of this situation in front of us, let's say with a complex elder care and like a adolescent behavioral health situation, just all at the same time. But it happens, and it happens, and it happens in a way that people who would otherwise actually be well positioned to kind of manage and address, usually as a family or as kind of a team of extended professionals, if there was just one personal disaster at a time. But no, sometimes they stack up, or one leads into the other, and it is breathtaking, not in a good way, I will say. So speaking high level about my own experience, at the same era of life, in 2016, so coming up on 10 years ago, my husband and I were starting a family. And like many people starting a family, pregnancy loss ended up being part of our story, part of our experience. And so my first pregnancy sadly ended in miscarriage. It makes me a member of a club of a lot of people who I wish we weren't in that community together, but here we are. Followed by that pregnancy. Fortunately, I am now proud to have a healthy 11-year-old boy. But the pregnancy that was wished for, wanted for, and the grief of the initial loss, there was some complexity that came and was in store for us. So my first live birth for my child, my oldest son, ended up being premature labor, and ended up with an extended stay in the NICU, which, again, if you know, right? Time in the NICU, time in the PICU, really hard, but lots of ups and downs in that, but he's healthy now. It was actually in the second pregnancy, which going into it, automatically you're categorized as, that high risk pregnancy, and a geriatric pregnancy at that, once you're 35 and older. It's a great term, geriatric pregnancy. We already knew going in that the doctors are going to be keeping pretty close tabs on me. About early into the end of the first trimester, okay, we've made it through. Not probably good chance we're not going to have another pregnancy loss. Okay, we're going to keep tabs on the labor, make sure no early labor occurs if possible, and doing all the interventions and care. Early in that, sort of, again, I guess it would be, in between, kind of coming out of the first and into the second trimester. Unfortunately, that is when my father-in-law was diagnosed with late stage cancer, specifically a very rare bile duct cancer. And we started the ups and downs of the diagnostics to learn more. Is it operable? There's a tumor. Where is it? Is it operable? Surgery, exploratory, hope's dashed. More hope about treatment plan. Ooh, it's not doing what we expected. Good news, bad news, clinical trial. You're eligible for a clinical trial, and just all of that. And I know for anyone listening right now, probably should have given a trigger warning, because I know those of us who, again, have been there one time, many times, for ourselves, for others, it's just all those details of day to day. You never get to take a break from being a cancer patient. You never get to take a day off from being a family member of a cancer patient with a very serious, disease state and progression. Simultaneously, the 20-week ultrasound, which is usually where, people want to learn the gender. They learn the gender at that time. It's a point of celebration, and it's a lot of kind of, okay, great, we checked it out. Everything looks good, except for when it doesn't. And that's when we learned that was where the stacking had occurred of the hard things, where they discovered in utero birth defect for my youngest child. And that turned into, without going into all the detail, just upped the level of complexity, upped the level of risk, and really, frankly, upped the level of fear about what his life might be like in the long run, with quite a lot of uncertainty along the way. So when you couple that with, you're back at work with a toddler that has not terrible, but some lasting health matters related to being a NICU baby, preemie, and then you have a pregnancy that people are simultaneously saying, don't stress yourself out. It'll be bad for the baby. When you're thinking, okay, but I'm dealing with X, Y, and Z. Your husband and your extended family member support care about you, but you and they together are also worried about and concerned about your father-in-law and everything he's going through and what his future will look like. And it really ended, I will say not ended, but there was a period in May. May is always hard for us, Donna. Every year in May, where after my infant son was born, it was better understood what exactly the course of treatment was going to look like, what a surgery was going to look like for this particular birth defect in one of his organs. The good news is it was operable, still risky, but operable. He was 10 weeks old when he had surgery.
Wow.
Yeah. So that meant that 3 weeks later, sadly, when I was might get a little emotional, when I was in the ICU in a hospital 2 blocks away from the hospital where he was both born and then had his 4-hour surgery on the tiny little baby, right? 3 weeks later, he still had bandages and was still healing when I had him in my baby carrier in the ICU during what would be the last 36 hours of life of my father-in-law. I can't drive through that part of town without having, a lot of feelings and emotions and memories, and just that feeling of, even when you are with family, even when you can count on certain, let's say, resources and a bed to sleep in, and food in the fridge and all the things that are going right, you can still feel so alone. You can still feel so hopeless. You can still feel so not resilient, right? And feel that those moments, and really that's, not every situation is going to be maybe that extreme where we can support folks, but everybody's overwhelming situation, circumstances, scenario is really unique to them. What might be a crisis for one person or family might be kind of a regular Tuesday for somebody else. So there's no value judgment there. But wherever somebody is, if you're feeling like there's no time, there's no understanding of where to go or what to do, there's confusion around the technical aspects of whether it's healthcare or law or finance or all three mixed together, you're just out of your depths from an expertise standpoint, because that's not what you do. And then if you add in a layer of trauma or high stakes, or, how many cancer patients do we know become ill with the same cancer that maybe their parent died of, right? Breast cancer is an example, and the trauma that brings up, right? And the fear. And so really it's within those experiences that the opportunity, if we are able to be known by, again, a family or individual, whatever that looks like, that's where what we do can really matter, can really be meaningful, can really be appropriate. And it's absolutely not a one size fit all. So in some ways, the ways we approach understanding or kind of discovery phase of a situation, even if that has to happen quickly, is the stabilizing, the understanding what are actual options, what can we do, even if one of the options is just wait and see, which is so hard. And then into, okay, we've made a decision, now we can kind of architect a plan in that direction and maybe be there for the kind of implementation to a bit, and then really bridging to either those functions as needed, ongoing, being within the family, or a support system of professionals that are either in steady state or might be called upon or activated as needed. That's really, when I describe that, that's the arc of the engagement, right? That's the beginning, the middle, and the end. And of course, things can be kind of finishing up, and then whoop, something else happens, and then you're back into it. But that really, there's such a variety, unimaginable variety of what, again, the specific stories of our clients and what they're getting through, what they're managing, what they're being asked to address head on. But
Mhm.
our approach is consistent. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we might be able to learn something in the morning from, I'm going to make this up, but an example might be a family where an individual has later stage Parkinson's disease, and then we're working later in the afternoon with someone. It might even be different team members working with each of those families, but we're able to share and inform so that the thing that the piece of information or the piece of inspiration or advice or question, even a question to ask that remains unasked or is not even known to ask from the family in the morning, can be in a way offered to a
Mm.
family in the afternoon. And that is, as I mentioned before, it's the closest thing to a time machine that we actually have.
Very, very fluid. Well, and I have to say, this has been an awesome interview, and I'm so excited that people are getting to learn that your services are available. And I encourage everybody to, check you out, and we're going to get to that in just a second. But thank you for being vulnerable, for sharing your own story. And it's just, I think it's that kind of sharing that just reminds people that we're not alone. A lot of
Not
times it
alone.
can feel like it, but
Gosh, it sure can feel like it though, Donna, doesn't
right,
it?
it
Just sometimes
can.
like, I hear you saying you're not alone, but I still feel alone. And yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So here's the thing: is you have resources now, and this is fabulous. So share with us how everyone can reach out to you, learn more about the work that you do, and how they might
Yeah.
actually connect with you.
Thank you, Donna. Absolutely. So all roads really lead to our website. And it's really, we try to make it as easy as possible to learn more about what we do. But really, we try to get folks when they're ready, when the time is right, to schedule a call with our team. So at the very top of the bannisteradvisors.com website, you can even just do in the search engine Bannister. Think about a banister, which happens to be, again, my father-in-law's middle name, but a banister is also something that you hang on to for support, right? When you're going up or down a stairs, let's say, the banister is there for you. So put Bannister Advisors into any search engine or just bannisteradvisors.com, BANISTER advisors.com. That'll take you to our main page. Right at the top, there's going to be a yellow button for help to help you schedule that call. We'll call you in the time that you select when it's convenient for you. And we have a conversation with one of our team members. And through that, we explore and understand if, we're the right fit to, connect further. We try to get a sense of, is it a crisis? Is it urgent? Is this some, maybe you're getting ahead of wonderfully if you can, and some planning? Or is it maybe you're not really sure? And then if it makes sense to go further, that's where we kind of explain the next steps in our process and just we pace it, every step of the way. Clients are always the ones in charge, and they guide us for
Mhm.
what happens next. But we really try to make it easy, Donna, right? To just that initial kind of knock knock, am I in the right place? And we're very very straightforward when we're not a fit for what people are
Mhm.
looking for. So we whip out our Rolodex and we're referring if it's a situation where we might say to folks, "Oh, you don't need us. I think what you're looking for is XYZ." And like we're going to give you some information to get you and point it in the right direction, or at least to figure out someone who can get you closer to that. So we benevolently turn people away every day as well if it's not a fit. But when it is, we're really honored, we're really privileged to be able to do this type of work. Again, if we're lucky, we're talking about a handful of times in someone's life that they may be facing the kinds of situations where we can be useful. And so, as you can imagine, we're we're very honored to do this work, and we are actually really grateful when people find us and we can do what we can do, because that's how we make meaning of being humans in a world where it's not always easy.
There you go. Well, ladies, you have it. You now know Vanessa. She's there to help. And if when we don't know what we're supposed to be doing or what we don't know that we need to know, this is who we're going to be calling. So we appreciate you being a guest today, Vanessa.
Thank you so much, Donna. I appreciate your time.
I hope today's conversation left you feeling inspired, informed, and ready to take the next step in your financial journey. Remember, building wealth isn't just about money, it's also about creating a life that aligns with your goals and values. If you found this episode valuable, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with the women in your life who deserve financial empowerment too. Until next time, stay confident, stay empowered, and keep building the life you desire.